Now, welcome to another Let's Talk Some Bad Batch, where this time we'll be discussing the third episode, the Solitary Clone, of Season 2, I should say. And we will be doing that by reading and responding to some of the comments left on my review over on the other channel. But before we do that, let's get your very brief review of this episode.
I liked this episode better than the first pair. It felt so much like Clone Wars, and I really liked that aspect. I mean, bringing back battle droids, bringing back full clone regiments. But I also thought it was pretty deep into the inner minds of what's going on with the clones that are left. How is Crosshair feeling? How is the Empire seeing him? What has happened since we were gone?
All right, now that we have your review, let's move on to the top-rated comment and see what everybody else thought about this episode.
Top comment is from Milo the Mighty. This felt like a classic Clone Wars episode, and I mean that by the highest compliment.
Yeah, that's what you were just talking about. This
Exactly.
felt like classic Clone Wars. That's what I talked about in my review, and, by the fact that this is the top comment, a lot of people got that old feeling back.
Right, and it did. It felt like classic Clone Wars, and that was great. It felt like the good episodes of Clone Wars, not the fillery ones.
Yeah, not some of the not as good episode of Clone Wars.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like the idea that the Bad Batch should feel a little more Clone Wars-like. I almost think that this series should have leaned more into feeling like another war story. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is Star Wars, right? And what I loved about the Clone Wars is it kind of took stories from the war. We're now moving into a different war, or we will soon enough, the Galactic Civil War. I kind of like the idea that you would have a kind of an ongoing series that would deal with whatever the current war is that kind of would carry over different stories. I think that's kind of what this is, but they kind of tried to focus on a team at the same time, and I think they should have just stuck with the anthology thing.
I could see that being beneficial for this time period.
I'm not saying I hate the Bad Batch as is, but I think anthology, just a continuous anthology clone, or war story kind of show could be really cool. You can change the name every now and then. The war changes, but the idea behind it stays the same.
All right, next comment is coming from Sunny D88. That was the best episode of Bad Batch by far. Wish it was an hour long. Also, I really hope that Cody was actually able to escape and not just kidnapped into the Dark Trooper project. Yeah,
I think that was probably the best episode of Bad Batch. I mean, the first episodes of season 1, some of the other ones in the middle were decent, but this hit on all cylinders except for one. Mm-hmm. Really wasn't about the Bad Batch. But I'm also hoping good things for Cody. I want to see him and Rex reunite. I want to see... I mean, what happens to Cody? We get to see this, but now we have that other question mark at the end of, well, he wasn't hanging out with Rex, Wolf, and Gregor, was he? Maybe he wanted to go live a simple life as a farmer somewhere.
Maybe he loses his life trying to get Crosshair out.
Maybe.
Crosshair seems a little less content after this episode.
Crosshair is the big question mark.
Honestly, if any clones are involved in the Dark Trooper project, it's going to be the Commandos, the Republic Commandos.
Oh, like Delta Squad?
Yeah.
Well, we already saw them last season, so...
We know that they were in the trailer for this season.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure we saw them in the trailer for this season.
But
people
we know
love
that,
them.
Like, Rampart and I think a lot of the galaxy views the clones as expendable. So why would they take their conscripted troops and subject them to experiments that may possibly kill them, trying to turn them into Star Wars Spartans, when instead they could take these expendable clones and just do whatever they want with them?
Can we call them Star Spartans?
No. Next comment is from Bo and Debbie Mulder. I love that Crosshair is finally beginning to understand that he's just a number, that a majority of clone troopers have AWOL'd or have been forcibly retired, that he's got no bros here, that he's really alone, that he cares about the success of the Empire more than the Empire cares about him.
So true.
I mean, I did leave him for 32 rotations.
Yeah, he is. He is all for a cause that doesn't care about him at all.
And he's starting to realize that.
Yeah, but he doesn't know what to do about it.
No. He's missing the brotherhood that existed among the clones. And even when he was different from the other clones, he had a brotherhood within the Bad Batch. Now he's truly a solitary clone.
Yeah, it's a good name for the episode because we see him at the beginning and at the end kind of just sitting by himself.
Well, look how much happier he was on the mission working with Cody, with somebody who was more of a peer, somebody who respected him and was treating him like a brother again, that he respected. Yeah. He had a little piece of the brotherhood back, and it was snatched away at the end of the episode that Cody left him. Cody left the Empire.
Yeah, I don't think he realizes... I mean, maybe he does and doesn't realize just how much he misses his brothers, how important they are to him. He doesn't want to acknowledge that something is more important than the mission and the...
He needs a team.
Yeah.
The clones need each other.
Yeah, that was one of the keys to their success, the loyalty to each other, the brotherhood, the camaraderie, the fighting for something besides this nebulous republic that you're not really a part of, per se. You were fighting for your brother next to you, and he doesn't have a brother next to him anymore.
Next comment from Mac Welch. Poor Cody. He tried to make peace with the Empire and the galaxy at large, but the Empire wanted him to commit murder.
It did, didn't it? Or at least Governor O'Grotten Potatoes did.
Yeah. Governor O'Grotten Potatoes was all about murder.
Yeah, Governor Groton, but...
It makes you wonder, did Crosshair pull the trigger to follow orders like a good clone, or did he do it to protect Cody?
That's interesting. I didn't even consider that.
I did. I was wondering, because Crosshair wasn't given the order. Cody was. And they were waiting for Cody to carry out the order as the commander of the squad.
Yeah.
Now, this is a situation we saw back in Season 1. When Crosshair gave an order to his troops, the troop who didn't want to shoot the innocent civilians, what happened? Crosshair shot him.
Yeah.
This is a different Crosshair. Instead, Crosshair, the old Crosshair, if we saw from Season 1, he would have shot Cody and then shot him.
He would have.
But he didn't.
That's a good point.
So was he doing this to protect his brother?
That is a very interesting point. He should have shot Cody for disobeying treason right there.
That's what he did in the first
it's exactly what he did, yeah.
And he even called it right away. Hey, he told him earlier in the episode, when Cody was telling him, hey, some clones are thinking about this is a bad thing and stuff. And he's like, well, they're traitors then. And like the Jedi.
That's not the best Crosshair I've ever heard. You have some good impressions, but that's not one of them.
I'm not a clone impression. At the beginning of the episode, he told them that he would consider them a traitor if you disobey the orders, if you question the orders.
Yeah, well, then
and now what happens? Cody questioned the order.
And he still talks to Cody later, too. Like, they have another, at kind of the war memorial place. They at the end of the episode, they speak again. So it's not like he was, mad at him for not following, or thought he should be tried for treason.
Like I said, he should have shot him. And carried out the order himself. Instead, he carried out the order almost protecting Cody.
Yeah, maybe he kind of understands why Cody didn't want to fire. Maybe he's finally getting it.
Next comment comes from Creative Name. As someone whose favorite clone is Cody, this episode was beautiful. I also love that the Governor, despite being a Separatist, wasn't a villain. I grew up with the Clone Wars, and this to me felt like one of the really good Clone Wars episodes.
There are heroes on both sides. Mm-hmm. That was the name of course, an episode of the Clone Wars, as well as being in the opening crawl of Revenge of the Sith. It's all about perspective.
Perspective.
Yeah,
the winner of the war gets to write the history books.
Yeah, the Separatists didn't see themselves as the bad guys.
No, they just... And I've said, well, at least I've said it to you, if Palpatine wasn't pulling the strings behind this whole war, setting the entire thing up, I feel like the Senate would have found a peaceful solution for them. Part of my reasoning for that goes because of the fact that Mandalore said during the war that they wanted to remain neutral. And the Republic, despite being in the middle of a war, respected that.
And there were plenty. There were actually plenty of neutral systems as well. That Mandalore was kind of.
Mandalore was part of neutral systems that didn't choose a side, and the Republic respected that to the best of their abilities. Yeah. I feel like if the Palpatine would have been behind the scenes orchestrating the war, using Count Dooku to orchestrate the war, would there have been a war, or would they just have eventually talked it out?
Yeah, because Palpatine's obviously behind the scenes making it worse when in front of the cameras he's pretending to make it better. So, you do have that catalyst behind the scenes that nobody even knows is there. So it is an interesting question. I mean, kind of the gripe of the Separatists is, they don't get representation per se. No taxation without representation.
Right, they're not smaller systems for the most part, and they're not represented fairly as they see it within the Senate, and they want to have their own government.
Yeah. They're sick and tired of, supplying the core worlds and not getting what they feel they deserve from that.
I think they would have talked it out. They would have hugged it out.
Padme would have got them to hug it out.
There would have been a solution. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, probably.
Next comment from KS. I feel like Cody was either consciously or unconsciously honoring Obi-Wan's legacy and trying to negotiate peace with the Governor. I'm sure he learned some of those skills by serving under his leadership, making it even more gutting to see him betrayed by the Imperial tactics.
The new negotiator, Cody.
2.0. Or maybe he's just 0.5 right now. He did the negotiation, but the resolution wasn't there.
Well, that wasn't his fault. He was going to stick by his word. He was appalled by the order.
Then he should have turned and shot the Governor.
But no, I agree. It does feel like Cody has picked up a lot from Obi-Wan, right? Mm-hmm. That there is definitely influence there, which is cool.
Well, it's the same with Rex.
Yeah,
You can see his influence by hanging out with Anakin.
Almost in spite of Anakin, right? But yeah, there's certainly influence there. It's cool to see the Jedi be reflected in the clones. I think that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Next comment comes from Cody Adams. I really didn't enjoy the first 2 episodes. Was feeling very negative about the series as a whole. After watching this episode, I'm excited again and can't wait to see where the story goes.
This episode, I mean, the first 2 were like, okay. I see you're maybe trying to set up some inner turmoil with the clone or with the Bad Batch team, and are they going to fight the Empire? Are they going to try to hide? This episode, though, felt like a good story. It felt like, as we've been saying, a really good Clone Wars episode.
I feel like the difference between these sets of episodes and why we are more interested in some groups than others is what they're fighting for. The first episodes with the Bad Batch, they were fighting for themselves. They were looking for a way out. We want to see them helping the people of the Republic. We want to see them trying to make things better. We want to see them fighting for a greater cause than themselves. That feels like a selfish villain tactic, not a hero tactic. So yeah. That's for me is why I wasn't too into the first episodes. It's like, okay, so they're trying to fight for themselves. They want to get money for themselves. This isn't about the galaxy. This isn't about making things better. This is about selfishness. We turn around and we see this episode and we see the inner turmoil. We see what they're fighting against, and it's important.
Look at Rebels. Rebels is kind of, in some ways, the same thing. It's kind of this tight-knit group, family kind of thing, trying to make their way in the galaxy. But
so
Rebels...
Ezra's Omega.
Kinda. But no, in Rebels, they had a cause and a purpose. They were fighting the good fight in their own small ways. It wasn't just about, well, we got to survive and hide. And...
Yeah, they started by trying to liberate Lothal and then moved to a bigger scope.
Yeah, the story progressively got bigger there, too.
So what we need is the Bad Batch to go back to trying to help people. That's what we need to see. That's what Echo was pushing for.
Yeah, well, I think the Bad Batch as kind of taking bounty hunter-style missions can work and could have worked. They just needed to be some sketchy missions. There needed to be some moral ambiguity here or some moral questions. Like, oh, if we go take this mission, some people might suffer. But hey, we get to eat next week and get to continue to hide. So instead of there being any of these, there's no complexity to the story of the Bad Batch right now. I think it's the biggest problem. It's a very simple, do random mission A, get supplies, move on to random mission B, with no kind of strings attached.
Next comment is from Dragonborn 795. There's implications Count Dooku thought he would be by Darth Sidious's side after the war.
Yeah, this goes along with what I talked a little bit about in my review about Dooku and what his kind of motivations are, what his endgame goal is by joining up with Palpatine and kind of doing the war and being the leader of the Separatists, which does he intend to betray Palpatine at some point, which, he's a Sith, he obviously does at some point want to be the master, but what is he thinking is going to happen at the end of the war? How much did he know about the actual plan? Because it's not like he can just, stand alongside Palpatine when all is said and done and be like, yeah, I'm on his side now, even though I led the other side.
Very odd, because you feel like Dooku's a smarter character than this.
Yeah, well, they've been kind of showing us in these first couple episodes. They've been dropping some hints about Dooku and what he's all about, and then we had Tales of the Jedi. So I feel like there's both this direct and indirect attempt to give us more Dooku. Explain it more.
Maybe towards the end of the war, maybe Palpatine thought Dooku might actually betray him to protect the systems that he loved.
Well, I think Dooku may have planned to betray him all along. Like I said,
maybe
he's
that's
a
why
Sith.
he was squeezing money from his own people in this desperate fear of what could happen.
Yeah. Because all I'm saying is, okay, the Clone Wars end, and it's not like you can just say, come on, Dooku, you can be my right-hand man now. That doesn't work. Look at any major war throughout history, and imagine if all was said and done, if the enemy of the other side suddenly became your rulers, your president, your king's, right-hand man. That seems a little fishy.
Last comment today comes from Istari. Perhaps the best episode so far. I really enjoyed the interaction between Crosshair and Cody and hope Cody is in more episodes. The only disappointing part is that, as others have observed, the absence of the Bad Batch is a large part of why this episode is so good. Filoni needs to fix this.
Yeah. It's kind of what we've been saying and hinting at. It's the Bad Batch itself is the weakest part of the Bad Batch series.
I don't want to watch the whole series going, I'm trying to pick out those Crosshair episodes.
I know.
Those really good ones. I mean, yes, we had to do that with the early seasons of the Clone Wars, but I don't want to do it here.
No, I feel like there's definitely potential. It's not that I dislike them. It's not like I'm like, oh god, it's a Bad Batch Omega episode. Mm-hmm. It's not like that. It's just they're not the most interesting aspect, and it's not even really all that close. This episode was fantastic. This is a really good episode.
Absolutely.
And the Bad Batch team is not in it at all. It's like we got some Book of Boba Fett episode 5 vibes going on. You know, Mando shows up like, yes, all right, a good episode, even though Boba Fett isn't in that episode. I feel like it's the same thing here, where we're looking forward more so to the episodes that don't have the Bad Batch.
I want to see Cody leading the Underground Railroad to getting clones back out.
I could see something like that, though I think Cody's now out.
But maybe Crosshair could help him. Crosshair's is in.
You see Crosshair going good guy and maybe trying to help the clones in the end?
I think that we're already setting up Crosshair. I feel like he was protecting Cody earlier. That's the only
I think you make a great
me.
point. That is a very good point.
I think as Crosshair's eyes open to what this empire he is serving is doing, not so much doing to the galaxy, because I don't think he cares about that, but he cares about what it's going to do to his brothers. He cares about camaraderie to an extent, even though it doesn't seem like he does.
I don't think he realizes he does.
I think he didn't realize the Empire doesn't care about him.
Yeah. He's getting the message now.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been something, though, if Crosshair had executed Cody. Talk about cementing yourself as a villain.
You know how much
in the eyes of the fans.
Yeah,
oh my goodness. There's this.
You're like, did Crosshair really just?
There's this tiny part of me that wishes they would have gone there, because that turns Crosshair into the villain. Even though you thought you get these hints and signs like, oh, he's coming around.
For him again.
Yeah, they're building to something with him, which is again more interesting than what they're building with Omega on the Bad Batch, unfortunately. All right, well, that is all we got for you this time. So do take to the comments below. Tell us what you thought of this episode of the Bad Batch, or what you thought of what we or what anybody else in the comments here had to say about it. So again, take to those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.